From Columbia1.com. New porcupine species discovered in Colombia, first in 126 years. From prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Remember to like, comment, and if you love talking about animals, share this show with everyone you know. You can catch our daily news live streams at 6 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday, on Rumble and YouTube. Now, let's get into the news of the day, taking a deeper look into what this mysterious porcupine is. So, um, a team of national and international researchers from the Humboldt Institute has discovered Coendu vosi, a new porcupine species endemic to Colombia. And it says under the picture, with this, Colombia now has 7 porcupine species. So, yes, many people tend to think of porcupines as specifically restricted to North America, but the truth is that there are many different species once you venture into different parts of Central America, South America, Africa, and Asia. There are around 18 different species of porcupine throughout the world, and they all range from somewhere around a couple of pounds to over 40 pounds with the North American porcupine. This finding is particularly significant. So, as no new porcupine species had been recorded in the country for 126 years. With this addition, Colombia now boasts 7 porcupine species within its rich biodiversity. The identification process began in 2018 with the study of Quichua, species previously believed to be wildly distributed across Ecuador, Panama, and Colombia. So, looking at the family of mammals in which the porcupines belong to, which is Eusentidae, um, these different porcupines, they are all members of the rodent family. Also, I believe the smallest porcupine is something called the Brazilian rat. And despite it being called a rat, it is related, but it's actually a species of porcupine. Okay. The research work began in 2018 when a group of scientists was analyzing porcupines in Colombia, particularly the Quenduo quichua species, which was considered to have a wide distribution in Ecuador, Panama, and Colombia. However, we began to notice differences between the species and some porcupine populations inhabiting the Caribbean region's dry forest and the Magdalena River's inner Andean Valley in Colombia. So, this is interesting. They were going over different species of porcupine within Colombia. Also, porcupines can be omnivorous, but for the most part, they tend to be quite herbivorous. So they will specialize in, well, let me rephrase that. They have a general menu, depending on the species, of different types of fungi or mushrooms, and even different types of bushes or shrubs. And they will also feed on bark, especially in different parts of Asia and North America. However, To confirm these differences, researchers examined specimens housed in renowned institutions, including the American Museum of Natural History in New York, the Natural History Museum in London, and the Swedish Museum of Natural History. Colombian institutions such as the Humboldt Institute and the National University also played a key role in the study. So, um, there's not really anything I can say about that paragraph. It's just nice to know what they were getting, what they were obtaining. Okay, specimens from different museums. It is quite interesting how many of these different museums, especially the larger ones in different parts of well, okay, it mentioned Natural History Museum in New York, but it's just even other ones outside of these more well-known museums. You would think would have a variety of different specimens of these different species, especially from times before they became endangered in some instances, and they don't, which is interesting. But they specifically went to these three. Um, it's just interesting to note. By the end of the study, scientists concluded that Quendu Quechua actually comprise three distinct lineages. Quendu, okay, so I don't know what specific species this porcupine is, but I'm just telling everybody that Quendu is referring to the genus, and uh, the Quichua is the distinct species. So Quendu Quichua found in the Ecuadorian Andes. So these are actually the Andes, one of the longest mountain ranges in the world, and ranges from different parts of Ecuador down to Argentina. Quendu Rothschildi distributed in the Chaco Darien region. Not familiar with that specific area. Quendu vosi, the newly identified species, which is exclusive to Colombia and inhabits the humid and dry forests of the inner Andean Magdalena Valley and the Caribbean region. Also, when it comes to the different populations of these three distinct species of the Quendu genus, it's can be quite difficult to get an estimate in the population because in many cases there isn't a lot of research done in these forests, um, probably due to strict limits from the government. And um, I'd say that's the main problem, not necessarily funding. Quendu volsi has several distinctive features that set it apart from other porcupine species. One of the most notable is its size. It is smaller compared to other porcupine species. Its body measures between 26 and 33 centimeters, and its tail, which accounts for more than 70% of its total length, allows it to adapt to its arboreal lifestyle. Wait, so is Quendu volsi the porcupine that they've discovered? Hmm. Um, Okay, bicolored or tricolored spines. Its body is covered in spines with a light base followed by a darker shade. Yeah, not every porcupine has the same distinct coloration. Um, I mean, when you're looking at this specific species, it is vastly different from something like the African crested porcupine or the North American porcupine, even different species over in India. So it's vastly different. I think it looks pretty good for a rodent in general. Okay, so its back has dark, sparse fur concealed by spines measuring between 27 and 55 millimeters in length. Eh, what? Is that it? What? Okay. I'm still confused. Like, what is this thing? Is okay. So we know. Okay, so it is. So it's Quendu vosi. Okay, so 2018 there was a study with Quendu quichua. But there just isn't a typical English name for it at the moment. Okay, well, it's good to hear that we discovered Quinduvosai. Okay, I guess this is kind of like what you would see with different species of prehistoric mammals. In many cases, they're not given an English name. I mean, the Latin and Greek is pretty good. It's just usually with modern mammals, there tends to be like, you know, With Ursus arctos, you have the brown bear. So, I'm guessing that this mammal's feeding on different species of fungi and probably also gnawing on tree bark, but it mentioned nothing about its behavior. I mean, usually, these animals aren't very fast. I mean, porcupines aren't necessarily the slowest things when climbing a tree. I mean, they're much quicker than something like a sloth, but um, didn't really get much of an insight into its overall ecology. So let me know what your favorite species of porcupine or rodent is in the world in the comments. And thank you for joining Creature Guy Live. Let's move on to the next article by Sci News. 6 million-year-old fossils of terrestrial apex predator discovered in Dominican Republic. Well, this is not a place that you very often hear many fossils coming from. This apex predator is a type of Cebacid crocodiliform with South American origins, according to new research led by the Florida Museum of Natural History. Well, this is good to hear. A Cebacid crocodilomorph from the Dominican Republic, and usually they're found on the mainland. Not that the Dominican Republic doesn't at all get fossils, but they're not too common. Um, Cebacids, they come from a long line of different species of, well, different families of crocodilomorphs. So, let's see, dominates South American landscapes after the extinction of dinosaurs until about 11 million years ago. Actually, I'd say that's a bit early. The Cebacids went extinct somewhere around 3 to 5 million years ago during the Pliocene. So what it's mentioning here is towards the mid Miocene. No, yeah, I'd say towards the upper later Miocene epoch. Cebacids were the last surviving members of Notosuchia, a large and diverse group of extinct crocodilians with a fossil record that extends back into the age of dinosaurs. Well, if we're looking at, we have to look at it a bit more specific. So, Cebacids are a family of crocodilomorphs that first evolved around 67 million years ago. At the last million years that the dinosaurs were around, ended up surviving the mass extinction and thriving throughout the Cenozoic era. Um, Cebacids could range from being just a few pounds to, I think, close to a ton in some instances. Now, the interesting thing about these reptiles is that when you look at crocodilians today, their hips are splayed out to the side and they can be quite clumsy on land. But the thing is that when you look at these different crocodilomorphs, and this was not just restricted to Notosuchia, as you can see here, it's almost like a dinosaur in some instances where it has a very upright posture and the hind limbs are structured or splayed out right beside the core of its body. And so it's very unlike modern crocodilians. It also looks like these animals were not really aquatic for the most part, or even semi aquatic, mostly terrestrial. They represented a wide range in size, diet, and habitat, and were notably different from their crocodile relatives, as most of them lived entirely on land. Semicids acted like carnivorous dinosaurs, sprinting after prey on their four long, agile limbs and tearing through flesh with their notorious teeth. I think in many instances, the Cebicids, many different families of the crocodilomorphs, were a bit more intimidating than many of the theropod dinosaurs themselves, more because they just have that distinct crocodilomorph sort of look. And these animals also did have the ability to efficiently run on land. So by the Paleocene epoch, we're talking somewhere around 62 million years ago. They were already hunting pretty much every mammal on land. So even though the dinosaurs went extinct, their distant relatives um, did leave behind quite a gruesome legacy. Some species could reach 6 meters or 20 feet in length and had protective armor made of bony plates embedded in their skin. The end Cretaceous mass extinction that wiped out non avian dinosaurs nearly destroyed Notosuchians as well. In South America, only the Cebicids endured. And with the dinosaurs gone, they quickly rose to be the apex predator. And many tend to associate animals like the terror birds of the Paleocene epoch or even the Eocene as being the top predators. But with the larger species, it looks like with more analysis done on their beak structure, just their overall physiology, they were probably herbivores and just going after different species of seed. And reason why they were seen as the top predators because at the time, outside of different species of other reptiles, these terror birds, like the diatrima in the region, would have reached somewhere around 6 to 6.5 feet in height and technically are capable of killing many of the mammals in the region, but it's just that it has quite a dull beak. Usually, when you look further in time in Cenozoic and you had terror birds with very curved beaks, that's something that would be very useful in killing a mammal. And when it comes to top predators, the crocodilomorphs were um, the apex terrestrial carnivores. We're not even including the semi-aquatic predators at this time. So semi-aquatic refers to animals like alligators or crocodiles. You could even point out seals, for instance. They require water for a period of time. I'd say the seals more than animals like crocodiles or alligators, but at some point they need to come to land to rest and then even give birth, lay their eggs. When it comes to the crocodiles or alligators, not usually mating though. That tends to occur in the water. But seals have to come to land for that instance. The open sea separating the Caribbean islands and mainland South America would have posed a serious challenge for a terrestrial cebicid to swim across. Yeah, it doesn't look like, or at least there's a bit of a debate, how efficient at swimming these cebicids would have been. Many crocodilomorphs were specifically designed for a land based lifestyle. In the new study, Florida Museum of Natural History paleontologist Jonathan Block and his colleagues examined a 6 million-year-old fossilized tooth and vertebrae of a Cephasic crocodiliform collected at the locality of Paleopon 1 on Sabana Grande de Boya, the Dominican Republic. Yeah, so referring to the Pliocene where this specific species was from. So this was much later than what is described in the picture. So this is more turns the mid Pliocene epoch. It's going to be hunting in some cases. Let's see where we are, South America. Hmm, maybe different species of smaller relatives of the mastodon in some instances. It could have been hunting certain species of early armadillos or a variety of different mammals within North America, possibly even gomphotheres at this point, which were an early relative of the mastodons. Now, see, where was I getting? Oh, so the Cebicids, so they evolved around 67 million years ago. They're also a branch of the Cebusuchidae lineage of crocodiliforms, which evolved somewhere around 167 million years ago during the late Jurassic period. The first question that we had when these teeth were found in the Dominican Republic and on other islands in the Caribbean was, "What are they?" Dr. Block said. The authors also studied 18 million-year-old teeth from Cuba and a 29 million-year-old tooth from Puerto Rico. In finding the fossils, we revealed possible evidence in support of the Garlandia hypothesis, they said. This theory suggests a pathway of temporary land bridges or a chain of islands once allowed land animals to travel from South America to the Caribbean. So, an 18 million-year-old teeth from Cuba and 29 million-year-old tooth from Puerto Rico. So, these seem to be, well, I mean, that's quite a distance in time. I mean, we're talking 11 million years, one in completely different islands, two completely different islands. but probably yeah, completely different um, species and probably even completely different genres. I'm wondering if they are from the same family, like these are sebicids. Just unfortunately, they only found maybe a handful of teeth. Let's see if the serrated teeth discovered on other Caribbean islands also belong to a sebicid. The history of these giant reptiles extends beyond the Dominican Republic. They would have occupied and shaped the region's ecosystems for millions of years, yet today you'd be hard pressed to find evidence to large terrestrial predators. Now, also during this time, well, not during this specific time, you'd have to go back to like the Paleocene epoch, so a little over, um, well, somewhere between 50 to 56 million years ago, also including the Eocene, you would have had giant snakes in South America like Titanoboa, which could reach over 50 feet in length, that coexisted with these sebicids and a wide variety of different crocodilomorphs. You even had different relatives of modern day alligators and crocodiles, like the giant Purosaurus, which would have existed, could reach over 40 feet in length and mainly fed on the different reptiles in the regions, probably feeding on a variety of turtles, um, probably caimans in the region, and any mammals. Even these crocodilomorphs would have to be pretty careful with that individual, but not specifically this species, considering this was the Pliocene, probably had to compete with different types of mammalian predators, especially relatives of the saber-toothed cats at this point. You wouldn't have been able to predict this looking at the modern ecosystem. Oh, in their absence, smaller endemic predators like birds, snakes, and crocodiles have evolved to fill the gap in the food chain. The presence of a large predator is really different than we imagined before, and it's exciting to think about what might be discovered next in the Caribbean fossil record as we explore back further in time. Also, when it comes to some of their earliest ancestors, just the crocodilomorphs in general, they started evolving, at least with the um, so I think the true crocodilomorph somewhere around 242 million years ago, towards the beginning of the Triassic period. So this was also slightly before true dinosaurs first evolved, and they were also probably quite carnivorous. Though there is evidence for different species of crocodilomorphs that they would have been quite herbivorous, at least looking at their skull structure, maybe even omnivorous. So this was really interesting to see with this new species of crocodilomorph that was found specifically a sebicid in the Dominican Republic. You don't hear about this very often. Well, let me know in the comments what your favorite species of crocodilomorph is in general, or even crocodilians today. And thank you for joining Creature Guy Live. Now let's move on to the next article by good uh, rare.com. A rare vampire hedgehog discovered in wild 80 years after the species was first stored in the Smithsonian. It's almost like sounds like someone grabbed this hedgehog, threw it in the pantry, like somewhere, some container in the Smithsonian, and then he got some buddies to get him out, like some just special ops vampire hedgehogs, and they got him out of the container and they brought him back to wherever he's from. So looks tropical. On December 16th, 2024, the World Wildlife Fund released a 74-page report on 234 new species discoveries in the greater Mekong region. So it sounds like Southeast Asia. The vast water rich swath of land spans six countries: Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. The diverse region is a hotspot for some of the world's most endangered animals, including tigers, Asian elephants, longhorn saolas, Mekong dolphins, and many more. Um, okay. And this new report, which is a culmination of hundreds of scientific studies, sheds light on even more. Wait. Okay. I want to get to the okay. Among the 173 species of vascular plants, 26 reptiles, 17 amphibians, 15 fishes, and 3 mammals noted in the research, one 5-inch animal stood out among the rest, namely because the new species had already been discovered and sat in a dusty archive drawer for 83 years. And this happens with many mammals, reptiles, once you dive into the ocean, fish, different types of crustaceans, sponges, the vampire hedgehog or Hylomis macarong is from the Gymnure family, which are also known as moon rats or soft-furred hedgehogs. Let's see. So when it comes to hedgehogs, also people tend to associate them with England or Japan. Here's the thing, they're not native to Japan. Despite them representing good luck in the country, the problem is you have a native animal numbering possibly in the tens of thousands in that country. But you can find different species of hedgehog in different regions of Africa, Europe, Asia, and, I wanna correct something. So earlier I mentioned that there were only 17 different species of porcupine. There are around 17 different species of or just say 18 different species of hedgehog. There's over 58 different species of porcupine. So yes, the hedgehogs, they are also part of a family that, they share with different species of shrews. Okay, so its species name macaron comes from the Vietnamese word for vampire due to its long fangs. The vampire hedgehog has bristly fur in lieu of spikes and looks like a cross between a shrew and a rat, despite being more closely related to hedgehogs than rodents, as hedgehogs are not rodents, completely different order of mammals. The solitary creature keeps its local ecosystem in check by foraging at twilight for worms, mollusks, pests, and small reptiles. Yeah, also, depending on the type of hedgehog, they're going to be feeding on different species of insects. It's only in places like England where they have quite um, like easy access to different types of worms. That's not a very common food source depending on where the hedgehog exists. If you're looking at one of the like large-eared hedgehogs of the Arabian desert, it's definitely not going to be feeding on worms because there isn't any the climate, the ecosystem there is just not valuable for worms. So they're going to be feeding on different types of insects. Not very herbivorous. Ironically, given its namesake, Gymnures, like the vampire hedgehog, are known to emit a very strong scent, typically described as rancid garlic. Yes, this is also characteristic with different species of hedgehog is that they will release, quite odd odors. Um, I'd say garlic in general doesn't smell bad, but obviously, yeah, rancid garlic, oh yeah, that can be of use when deterring predators, which they produce when marking their territory. Although the vampire hedgehog was recently discovered in the southern Annamites of Vietnam, a specimen of the same animal has been housed in a collection at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History since 1961. So here is the vampire hedgehog. It looks very much unlike what you see in different species of hedgehogs, not just over in the British Isles, mainland Europe, but, even over into, Arabia and different parts of North Africa. Actually, if you go further south into different parts of sub-Saharan Africa, you'll find different species of hedgehog over in South Africa. Um, they tend to be covered in your, like, just stereotypical type of spine protection. Not so much for this individual. He really does look more close, bit more closer to a rat, but when you look at his skull, he is very distinct. thanks to an international effort to revise the taxonomy. So this is referring to the family tree. So like the different genres, families, and orders and classes that this mammal would belong to of lesser gymnures. I'm guessing this is referring to the subfamily in which this hedgehog belongs to of um, mammals. 6 countries took a look back at museum collections dating back to the 1930s. Yes, this can happen with, many different species of animals where, we'll actually look back, like, hundreds of years at what they were connecting to or the scientists at the time, what they were connecting, like, different mammals or reptiles, even dinosaurs, like, what other animals they were connecting them to. There are many instances where family trees will change within every, few years, but it's been happening more frequently between the early 2000s to, like, the 2020s at this point, particularly with different species of dinosaurs, but it has even happened with animals like bears. Um, that's when researchers at the Smithsonian uncovered an animal thought lost to time. Specimens that led to the description of Hylomice macaron had been housed in the Smithsonian since the 1960s, highlighting the potential of mining museums for new species. Arlo Hinckley, a postdoctoral fellow at the Smithsonian, explained in the report. The advent of museum genomics in greater Mekong countries will speed up species discoveries, particularly in Thailand and Vietnam that already have major natural history collections with large historical specimen series. Similarly, he continued, we must keep collecting specimens in poorly sampled regions for the next generations. They will surely also discover new species that we overlook. See, poorly. Well, he's referring to, yeah, these regions of Thailand and Vietnam, much of it, there hasn't been a whole lot of research done on different species of animals, especially like these types of hedgehogs, which some might confuse with the shrew. And it would make sense considering shrews and hedgehogs do belong to the same order of mammals. There are over 350 different species of shrew that have been discovered, not including extinct ones, just modern day shrews. Um, Perhaps even more astounding, the vampire hedgehog was discovered again in southern Vietnam during a 2009 expedition. However, the process of examining the collected specimens and cataloging it as a new species was exhaustive. Yeah, I bet it would be. And it took more than a decade for the animal to join other species on the scientific record. Yep, um, this happens a lot. I wonder if he was also put into some modern day animal waste basket, kind of like what we see with different prehistoric animals. We found this distinct species in Vietnam more than 2 years ago, but we took too long to describe it and we're too late. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second, just look to see if there's anything else. Okay. Well, it's good to hear that we found the vampire hedgehog within, thinking Thailand and Vietnam, and then they were comparing it with different specimens that were, at museums or wait a minute, was it that this distinct specimen was in the Smithsonian and then somehow vanished? Okay, well, it's good to hear about it. I'm guessing it's quite carnivorous, it's feeding on different types of insects. I'm not sure about the worms in this region. Let me know what your thoughts are on hedgehogs in the comments and the vampire hedgehog. And thank you for joining Creature Guy Live. So let's move on to the next article. Phys.org. Triassic specimen found to be early relative of pterosaurs a century after its discovery. So what do we have here? It looks like we have some early relative uh, possibly the pterosaurs? This looks like something that you find the very early Triassic, so I'm guessing somewhere between 230 to 240 million years ago. Life reconstruction of Scleromucus taylori. A new study of a tiny Triassic fossil reptile first discovered over 100 years ago in the northeast east of Scotland. Okay, well, this is good to hear. Scotland does not obtain very many species of dinosaurs or even pterosaurs in the region. Has revealed it to be a close relative of the species that would become pterosaurs, iconic flying reptiles of the age of the dinosaurs. The research published in Nature was carried out by a team of scientists led by you people. Okay, so looking at Triassic pterosaurs in general, this looks like yeah, it could be a close relative or possibly even a predecessor to the pterosaurs. Um, there are so far only around 17 to 20, no, I think it's around 30 different species of pterosaur that have been discovered from the Triassic. While that sounds like a lot, it really isn't once you head into the Jurassic and then the Cretaceous, and there are hundreds of them. So it's good to hear that at least we're finding something that appears to be a predecessor of the pterosaur lineage in Scotland. The results reveal new anatomical details that conclusively identify it as a close pterosaur relative. It falls within a group known as Pterosauromorpha. Yeah, that's a very large order of pterosaurs. It practically, I believe, um, consists of, like, many of the group, comprising extinct group of reptiles called Lagerpetids, together with pterosaurs. Oh, okay. Yeah, so they're around, like, 4 different types, including the petids of pterosaur that fall into Pterosauromorpha. So the Lagerpetids, these animals didn't really fly. Many of them were quite terrestrial, but like ground dwelling, but also had the capability of climbing in the trees, so being quite arboreal. Um, the Lagerpetids, in some instances, could be it's like they have a very skinny frame, but long as well. They had very long limbs compared to their body size, and not just referring to the forelimbs, that includes the hind limbs as well, but just they didn't have really just a very dense core. Living approximately 240 to 210 million years ago, Lagerpetids were a group of relatively small cat or small dog-sized active reptiles. Okay, well, we're talking about small dog-sized. We could be talking about something like maybe as long as a bulldog, but nowhere as heavy, like even lighter than chihuahuas in many instances. Probably not the smallest ones to come up, but um, they're just lighter simply due to their bone structure. These were not dense animals, and they were in some instances they almost looked like a very athletic lizard, but they were quite distantly related to lizards. And also, lizards are not dinosaurs, and they also did not even come from the same lineage in which, the dinosaurs came from. In fact, archosaurs came or appeared far after lizards appeared, like, back in the Carboniferous period over, 310 million years ago. So, you already had an abundance of different species of true lizards occurring during the early Triassic period. Um And also when it comes to, these pterosaurs, probably their predecessors, they had hollow bones, not something that you see with lizards. Um, okay, so Scleromochlus was smaller, still at under 20 centimeters in length. Yeah, that's like what, 9 to 10 inches? The results support the hypothesis that the first flying reptiles evolved from small, likely bipedal ancestors. Um, yes, it does look like with certain, um, Lagerpetids that some might have been actually quite bipedal, still all possessing quite long forelimbs, nothing like short forelimbs that you would see in most theropod dinosaurs. And then some would have been quite quadrupedal, so walking or some cases running and climbing on all fours. The finding settles a century-long debate. There had previously been disagreement as to whether the reptile Scleromoc Scleromochlus represented an evolutionary step in the direction of pterosaurs, dinosaurs, or some other reptilian offshoot. Um, whoa, wait a second. Wait, has Scleromochlus, was it found over 100 years ago? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, this happens quite often with different animals. So it looks like it was, discovered, but not really analyzed at all until the arguments started happening with pterosaur evolution. The fossil of Scleromochlus is poorly preserved in a block of sandstone, which has made it difficult to study in sufficient detail to properly identify its anatomical features. The fossil is one of a group known as the Elgin reptiles, comprising Triassic and Permian specimens found in the sandstone of the Morayshire region of northeast Scotland around the town of Elgin. Hmm. Let's see. Exciting to be able to resolve a debate that's been going on for over a century, but it's far more amazing to be able to see and understand an animal which lived 230 million years ago, hmm, and its relationship with the first animals ever to have flown. I was just guessing that it might have been much earlier, considering the Lygriptids evolved somewhere around 235 to 240 million years ago. This is not including I'm just including that specific family, not the whole branch of Pterosaur. This is another discovery which highlights Scotland's important place in the global fossil record. Um, the Elgin reptiles aren't preserved as the pristine, complete skeletons we often see in museum displays, if you find them. No, there's certain museums that do display these types of reptiles, even pterosaurs. They're usually still encased within the sandstone that they were found in because they're simply too delicate to extract from. They're mainly represented by natural molds of their bone in sandstone, and until fairly recently, the only way to study them was to use wax or latex to fill these molds and make casts of the bones that once occupied them. However, the use of CT scanning has revolutionized the study of these difficult specimens and has enabled us to produce far more detailed, accurate, useful reconstructions. Um, is there anything else? That's it. Okay, so what was your name? I believe it was Scleromolchus. Okay, well, it's good to hear that it looks like he could have possibly been the predecessor to the pterosaurs. We're talking hundreds of different species of, the closest relatives to dinosaurs, including birds. Some might, like, single birds out from the dinosaur lineage, but you would have to group them in. They're just simply avian dinosaurs. Um, the avian dinosaurs or the birds did evolve from a specific type of dinosaur lineage. The pterosaurs did not. They were their own branch of archosaurs, the closest relatives to, the dinosaurs. Now let me know your favorite species of pterosaur is in general in the comments, or animals related to the crestless Pterodactylus or the, more famous crested Pteranodon. And thank you for joining Creature Guide Live. Now let's move on to the next article by the Miami Herald. Notoriously elusive mammal seen in Australia after years-long search. For, hmm, looks like we've got some sort of a macropododontomorph. So, macropododontomorphs, this is a very, sort of vague description of a marsupial within Australia? Well, just Australia, but even outside of it, especially in different parts of New Guinea. And, you have, like, a wide variety of different marsupials that belong to this order of mammals, but they don't belong to the Macropodidae family that only consists of around 60 different species. On an otherwise oh, A trail camera recorded the first sighting of a long-nosed potoroo. Oh, okay. So this is a bit of a distant relative to the kangaroo, but it doesn't belong to the Macropodidae lineage of marsupials or even Macropodidata morpha. A notoriously elusive animal at Wallabach Wildlife Sanctuary. On an otherwise mundane night in eastern Australia, a long-nosed mammal emerged from its hiding place and hopped through the bush. A nearby trail camera managed to capture the notoriously elusive animal's quick appearance. Photos left ecologists feeling euphoric. Researchers with the Australian Wildlife Conservancy were reviewing trail camera footage from the Wallumbach Wildlife Sanctuary when something caught their attention. And I wonder, oh, guessing this is part of the eastern area of Australia. Wallumbach Sanctuary when something caught their attention. At the edge of a few photos taken in late June was an extremely difficult to detect animal, the long-nosed potoroo. Andy Howe, a senior ecologist with the organization. So, potoroos, there's, I believe, 3 distinct species. There's the long-nosed potoroo. There's also there's another type of species, but, these animals also focus on a wide variety of different species of fungi within the region. In fact, that's the core of their diet. Some cases, the potoroos might feed on as much as 90% of their diet consists of fungi, and then certain species of leaves might fall into, their diet as well, and even feed on a variety of different species of seeds. Long-nosed potoroos are roughly rabbit-sized marsupials with long and tapering noses. According to the Australian Museum, they are generally solitary and live in highly fragmented populations along the east coast of Australia. So here's another picture of the long-nosed potoroo. Certain species, I think the long-nosed potoroo is slightly larger, but there's another species of potoroo that doesn't exceed 35 ounces, is how light it is. Ecologists have been searching for long-nosed potoroos at another AWC wildlife sanctuary for 4 years without luck. Hmm. Long-nosed potoroo are notoriously difficult to detect in areas where they are at low densities. To make things more difficult, they are nocturnal and hide in grass nests during the day, making them basically impossible to see while wandering around the bush. So, there is another species of potoroo, not the long-nosed potoroo. Oh, okay. So long-nosed potoroo you can also find in different parts of the island of Tasmania, and I believe even, like, the outskirts of the island, at least towards the coast. So that's just southeast of the, um mainland of Southeast Australia, and you can even find them in different regions within, Eastern Australia. They're not as fragmented in population as, I think this article is making them out to be, but, like with what you see in certain koala populations. But there's another species that you it's a very small population, I don't know the approximate number, in a couple of areas over to southwestern Australia. The recent long-nosed potoroo sighting was the first time this species has been detected on an AWC sanctuary. Howe described feeling euphoric, saying there may have been a few fist pumps going on. I'm sure the species occurs at other locations on the property, but they are very shy to coming into getting their photos taken. Howe said even in the June sighting, they were not willing to hang around in front of the cameras. Yeah, this happens with many species of animals, even, larger mammals that just aren't familiar with cameras, trail cameras specifically. I'm sure this species the long-nosed potoroo is one of many species that were severely impacted by the 2019 to 20 Black Summer bushfires, with large areas of their habitat burnt to the ground. This has placed even more pressure on this species. Or, it was caused by the Pacharu and they were just fans of Nickelback. But anyway, it's a title. Ecologists hope to see more long-nosed Pacharoos in future trail camera surveys. Wallenbach Wildlife Sanctuary is a roughly 140-mile drive northeast of Sydney and home to dozens of threatened species. Was that it? Okay, well, this is good, that we're seeing the long-nosed potteroo in this specific wildlife sanctuary, so I hope these herbivores continue to increase in population because we do need more potteroos. The same thing for all the different species. They also belong to specifically the subfamily Potterinae, which consists of the different species of potteroo. Um, so let me know what your favorite species of marsupial is in the comments, and remember that there are over 330 different species of marsupial, not just over in Australia, but even different parts of New Guinea and South America. In the comments, and thank you for joining Creature Guide Live. Now let's move on to the next article by the UK Natural History Museum. Oh well, we haven't done this before. Looks like a species of Baryonychide. A subfamily of the Spinosauridae lineage of theropod dinosaurs. Another Spinosaur, Valleybona cani, was found in the same formation as Proteuthlitis, suggesting they could have lived side by side. It definitely looks like a relative of Baryonyx. I'm guessing this is part of the Baryonychidae lineage of Spinosaurs. There are instances where certain animals can look quite similar to each other, yet they're actually, more closely related to something else. So a new species of Spinosaur suggests the dinosaurs coexisted in Western Europe. Remember, this is not talking about Spinosaurus itself. This is probably before Spinosaurus evolved. Spinosaurus never reached England or, different parts of Europe. I've said England because when people think, at least those that are familiar with the Spinosaurs, and they think of England, they tend to think of baryonyx. Did inhabit England over 130 million years ago. Um, okay, a new species of Spanish dinosaur is helping to reveal more about the origins of the dinosaur group. Um, you don't usually hear about spinosaurs in Spain for very much, and you don't really hear about tyrannosaurs, so it's just nice to know that we have a spinosaur or another one that's been found in Spain. The newly described Proteuthlitis cinctorensis is the latest to be discovered in Spain, adding to the evidence that Spinosaurs first evolved in Europe. A football team's newest fan is over 125 million years old. Spanish researchers have named a new dinosaur species in honor of the football team Villarreal CF, like, named, Villarreal. I haven't worked on my Castilian. Named Proteuthlitis, Centarensis. The first half translates as champion in Greek, mm, in recognition of the club's Europa League win in 2021. Okay, I never heard about this. While the second half honors the town of King Torres, near to where the Spinosaurus was found. Wow, okay, this is pretty cool. Um, Dr. Andres Santos, Cueto, the lead author of the paper describing the species, says 3 of the authors of this paper live in Villarreal, and with the club's, centenary this year, we want to recognize its work both on and off the pitch by naming a dinosaur genus after it. This new species is adding to our understanding of how these large carnivorous dinosaurs evolved. Cassius Morrison, PhD student at the museum who studies Spinosaurus, says Spain and Portugal have been a recent hotspot for Spinosaur discoveries, with 3 having been described from this region before this paper. I don't know where Villarreal is. Artilithitis king Cinctorensis helps to cement the idea that these dinosaurs originated in Western Europe. So, this looks like this is the fossil formation, I'm guessing, where they found, this specific Spinosaur. So, it looks like fossils are being excavated from this part of formation. They're among hundreds recovered from the Andes fossiliferae site. Wow. So this is a very, um, at least specimens, well, it's saying dinosaurs among the hundreds. So what could be going on is that they're finding a variety of different teeth and probably scattered bones from other species of dinosaurs mixed in because usually you're not going to find that many like intact dinosaurs. And if you do, they tend to be completely mixed up with each other. So you can have several bones from possibly the same species of an animal, but different individuals are just mixed with each other, usually due to a flash flood event. Um, but I don't doubt they're finding different species of reptiles, fish, pterosaurs in this instance, maybe mammals in the center. The fossils of Pratz- Pratalitis were discovered in a group of rocks known as the Arquelas de Morala Formation. This formation, located in eastern Spain, is known for containing fossils of iguanodon and its relatives, as well as titanosaur-like dinosaurs. So they are finding possibly a certain a species of iguanodon, and not just any iguanodon like the famous genus itself, and titanosaurs. So unnamed species of the long-necked sauropod dinosaurs, specifically belonging to the titanosaur group within this region, specifically formation. One area that has been of particular interest to scientists is the ANA fossiliferous site. Since being discovered in 1998, over 500 fossils from a range of vertebrate and invertebrate species have been excavated, and Proctolitis is one of the most recent. Its type specimen, which is used to represent the species, consists of 5 vertebrae from the animal's tail, as well as part of its upper jaw. Okay, this is good to hear. So it wasn't just a few teeth. They did find part of the upper jaw. Question is it well, we found like upper quarter of the snout, like at least half of it. Let's see. 5 vertebrae from the animal's tail. That's not bad. A tooth previously found at the site has also been reclassified as belonging to this dinosaur. Found a tooth. Well, I just meant, well, they found more than that, I'm guessing, because here's the thing, um, you can have it with many instances with theropod dinosaurs where you will find part of the jaw, but maybe there's a couple of teeth intact or almost none. But you can still see the roots or a new one coming in some instances. Oh, Oh, has also been reclassified. So probably what was going on is that it might have been associated with another species of spinosaur, and they referred it to uh, Ornitholitis. The shape of the jaw and the teeth were similar to other spinosaurs. Well, I'm guessing baryonychids, like baryonyx, which at least what the picture represented, not like Spinosaurus, or even possibly Suchomimus. Those were very distinct spinosaur jaw structures. Baryonychids had very unique uh, just jaw structures in general, which would have allowed them to feed on fish along the coastline of what is now Spain. Spinosaurs are quite special theropods. Cassius says they ate fish and lived in and around water. There's a lot of debate about just how aquatic they were. Yes, even recently with the famous Spinosaurus aegypticus, there is now more debate on whether or not it might have been a swimmer. I'm like, oh, come on. At least you could have said that it could swim from one side of the river to the other. I mean, many paleontologists do agree with the theory that at least theropod dinosaurs in general, well, I mean, you can even include the herbivores, had at least the basic capability of swimming. Even the pterosaurs had the ability to swim. Okay, so there would have been a series of floodplains in which animals like, what's your name? Protathlitis over in Spain would have fished. Some scientists suggest they were like herons snapping up fish while waiting. That tends to be something like a theory that was going on with Spinosaurus, that the sail would have He's not the only one. There's like the Sigilum saurus. It's a close relative of Spinosaurus. Would have used their sails during parts of the day to create shade, and the fish would be attracted to this small area, and they would have snatched the fish. But with other animals like um, Cascolitis or Baryonyx, Suchomimus in this instance, they still could have attracted the fish. I mean, these animals are, at least when looking at animals like Baryonyx, you're talking about a 30-foot long, 2.5-ton predator that would have created a decent amount of shade and attract fish. But it's really just one of the hypotheses as to how they would have fished or attracted them. Others they think were more like a penguin and could move underwater to hunt fish. Suchomimus seems to be more like a heron, while Baryonyx and Spinosaurus had higher bone density. Yeah, it is interesting. Suchomimus does have, it's also from North Africa and lived around 110 million years ago, and Baryonyx is around 130 to 135 million years ago. And Spinosaurus existed around 97 million years ago. Baryonyx over in England, Spinosaurus from Egypt. Let's see. So yeah, they had higher bone density, which meant they could have spent time underwater. It would allow them to sink a bit easier. Just how aquatic these dinosaurs were and if they swam continues to cause controversy. Yeah, among paleontologists. The discovery of Prochellitis adds more evidence to the puzzle. This is an old picture of I believe it's a baryonyx model. Yep. Yeah, this isn't new. I also think it's a replica. There have been pretty intact baryonyx skeletons that have been discovered. I just don't think that's one of them. Because fossils of spinosaurs are often incomplete, the discovery of any new material can offer new insights about the group. Spinosaurs are notoriously fragmentary. These dinosaurs remain a very tantalizing and mysterious group, Cassius says. Their fossils may be so fragmentary because of the environment they were buried in. Spinosaurs such as the Isle of Wight's Ceratosuchops and North Africa's Spinosaurus may be broken up because they were deposited in a semi-arid floodplains um, or deltas. Meanwhile, one of the best preserved Spinosaurs, Baryonyx, was buried in a swampy environment with very still water that would have helped its fossils survive. Baryonyx has some of the best preserved specimens of any Spinosaur. Many would assume it's Spinosaurus, at least not at the moment. There have been more specimens of Spinosaurus that have been discovered recently. Suchomimus, the specimens are a bit rarer, and I'm not sure about the Isle of Wight's Ceratosukos. So the British Isles and Europe in general during the early Cretaceous were made by the Spinosaurs. While Prochellitis fossils aren't as complete as Baryonyx, a number of similarities between them suggest the dinosaurs would have been quite closely related. Oh, yeah, they okay, so it does belong to the same subfamily as Baryonyx, it looks like. This has helped the researchers to build a more detailed picture of the Spinosaur family tree. Its location in the Arcalasta Morala Formation also reveals more about the ancient ecosystems of what is now Spain. And another Spinosaur, Vallibonavatrex cani, was found in nearby rocks, suggesting that at least two Spinosaur species might have lived alongside each other. Yeah, this is good to hear. It's quite unfortunate when you hear in many instances where animals like Spinosaurus were the only one of their kind in the region, and in this instance, you have at least 2 different Spinosaurs, so this is good to hear. And also just to mention that these Spinosaurs were sailless. Unlike the Spinosaurini lineage of Spinosauridae, did not consist of elongated back vertebrae. Our research demonstrates that two subfamilies of Spinosaur occupied Western Europe during the early Cretaceous, around 145 to 100 million years ago, before later migrating to Africa and Asia. No, they were already in Africa by somewhere between 110 to 150 million years ago. For instance, Suchomimus. Um, Spinosaurus didn't probably appear until somewhere around 97 to 98 million years ago. That's much later. Um, okay, so This it? Okay. So this is good to hear that possibly we have two new species of Spinosaur over in Spain. Um, and especially with this animal, I don't think it ever mentioned the size of this new species of Spinosaur. But, it's just good to hear that we have another large fish eater in the region. So, let me know in the comments what your favorite species of Spinosaur is, and thank you for joining Creature Guide Live. Let's move on to the next article, final one, by ifaw.org. Two sun bears receive second chance to live in the wild. Well, this is good to hear considering sun bears are quite rare over in Southeast Asia, including many of the Southeast Asian islands. So, different parts of, Indonesia. Mono the sun bear in forced school during rehabilitation. He looks okay. So I wonder if he's like a yearling maybe? Two sun bear cubs rescued from illegal trade in Indonesia are being taught the skills required to live in the wild by dedicated human cares. Mono and Henry were very young, destined for a depressing life in captivity far from home when their lives took a turn for the better. Also, there are around two different subspecies of Urs wait, is it Ursus? Yeah. Ursus malleolanus. There's the mainland Southeast Asian sun bear, and then there's the Borneo sun bear. I guess no, Malayan sun bear and the Borneo sun bear. Malaysia is still part of the mainland. It's just um, East Thailand, Southeast. Acting on a tip-off, JAAN Indonesia and the Indonesian police intercepted an illegal trade deal that would have seen poachers ship mono from Indonesia to Dubai. Why, I don't like that city. Rescued from a car in Hakata and only 3 months old, she weighed just over 2 kilograms. Now, this happens in a variety of different cities throughout the world. Um, Henry was rescued by the Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry from owners who were keeping the 7-month-old alone in a cage, most likely destined for a similar fate to Mano. Thought he was even older, but sheesh. Um, now it's a big problem, especially with Asiatic black bears. It's horrible what happens to them over in Southeast Asia and different countries. Now, also in the care of JAAN Indonesia, Henry is being taught basics such as how to climb a tree and find food. Yeah, it's having to get his muscles working too. JAAN's rehabilitation of both bears is supported by IFAW. IFAW's program director, wildlife rescue Neil Greenwood said sun bears are the world's smallest and most vulnerable bear species. They're the smallest. Borneo, sun bears are even smaller. They've like 80 to 120 pounds. Mainland sun bears can get to somewhere around 145 to 156 pounds. There's possibly been larger individuals, the 160s, but they're also quite herbivorous. They are carnivorous, but a majority of their diet does consist of fruit, and they are also major seed dispersers as well for certain types of trees. Um, they do love coconut fruit, but they will go after different species of ants when fruit is less abundant. The ultimate Okay, so legal wildlife trade along with forest degradation are the main causes for the decline of sun bears in their habitat. Oh, what I meant to mention was the panda is the one that's at most risk. There's like 1,800 individuals in the wild. That's a major increase in the early 2000s, though. There were maybe around 600 to 1,000 bears, so it has dramatically increased despite, how much pandas are attacked. We work with JAAN and Indonesian authorities to ensure animals confiscated in illegal trade receive the best care and support JAAN's rehabilitation efforts. The ultimate end goal is to reintroduce these animals back to the wild, where they will be a valuable part of the population. JAN's co-founder, Famke Haas, said it was important that rehabilitation with both Mano and Henry started immediately as neither bear had the opportunity to learn vital survival skills from their mothers. Mano has been with us for 6 months now. She has 2 dedicated careers who take turns to look after her 24/7. Oh, carers careers. I was like, "Wait, I mean, maybe they're" um, I was thinking maybe they were talking about, like, different types of enrichment to help her survive in the wild, and then I realized, oh, carers, just as her mother would have. When she first arrived, she needed milk every 2 hours. Wow, that's pretty frequent. Then as she grew, we built a special enclosure for her so she could learn how to climb and find food such as termites. I wonder what the, fat, protein, just the overall formula for this type of milk would be for something like a sun bear, because it's going to be different for every bear species. Last November, she graduated to our forest school where her career carers spend all day with her as she explores the treetops and then sleep beside her enclosure at night. Mano is now starting to fold leaves to make a nest in trees, which is a very positive sign, I've said. So sun bears, they usually will inhabit different parts of larger branches, also close proximity to each other, around like 25 feet up in the air, and they will build a nest. It really is interesting. It's almost like when you're watching like a gorilla in some instances build a nest. So it's quite interesting. They almost have like a bird or sort of primate like preference for having, a bed. No, you could say different species of bears, like even black bears, will make their own sort of, bed on the ground, but it's very different from jumping up in the trees. Last November, she graduated to our forest school, where her carers spent all day with her as she. Oh, I already said that. The next phase of Mano's rehabilitation will be to fit her with a GPS tracker and release her deep in a national park away from any potential harm. Henry was 7 months old when he came to Anna, and as he had only ever known life in a small cage with a concrete floor, he has been slower to learn than Mano. Gosh, that's unfortunate. Since October, Henry's carers have been patiently teaching him skills such as how to climb trees, crack a coconut, and find crickets. That's really good. He has um, a large variety of different types of skills. So when he ventures back into the wilderness, he's probably going to be ready. Henry and Mano bonded when they were in the same custom built enclosure late last year. But unfortunately, Henry still has much to learn, so we couldn't take him to forest school with Mano. He is improving though, and Femke is still hopeful that one day he will have learnt enough survival skills that he can also be fitted with a GPS tracker and released into the national park in partnership with the Ministry of Forestry and Environment. We have worked alongside JAN through many projects, disrupting wildlife trafficking networks, training law enforcement teams, and rehabilitating wildlife. Providing monthly care costs for Mano and Henry and their GPS collars speaks to our work in finding a holistic solution to wildlife crime and its impact and providing care and welfare to those animals directly affected. Well, this is really good to hear with these 2 sun bear cubs. Um, I hope that the other one improves on his skills through more rehabilitation, and, I also hope that they end up having cubs of their own, considering there might be less than 8 to 10,000 sun bears in the wild, including both subspecies. Um, so, let me know what your thoughts are on these sun bears and what's your favorite species of bear on Earth. Um, and And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. Remember to like, comment, and if you love talking about animals, share this show with everyone you know. You can catch our daily news live streams at 6 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on Rumble and YouTube. And thanks for joining Creature.